In 1999, a sealed internal memo from the Smithsonian Institution surfaced for less than 48 hours. Its content? A formal acknowledgement of the coordinated disposal of over 12,000 humanoid skeletal remains, each standing over 8 feet tall, many with non-human cranial features. Not mythical, not legend, archived, catalogued, then deliberately destroyed. The memo's signature matched that of a high-ranking curator who, days later, was reassigned and never heard from again. The press called it a hoax, but the file metadata was intact, and the incident number, case file 421.9, matched an unrelated FOIA response 6 years later. This was real. Why does every anomalous fossil, every inexplicable artifact, vanish into locked basements? Why does evolution only go one way when the bones don't? If these files are real, we weren't the first. One document is still missing. We found 9 more. Across continents, across centuries, and across disciplines, one pattern keeps repeating. When a discovery threatens the official story of human origins, it disappears. Field reports vanish. Catalog numbers are reassigned. Researchers go silent. And sometimes, so do entire teams. This isn't about wild theories or ancient aliens. It's about documents. 10 of them, all real, all once filed, and all, without exception, erased. But before deletion, they left traces. Lab records, excavation logs, photo negatives, voice memos. Pieces of evidence that suggest Homo sapiens may not be the first, or only, intelligent species to walk this planet. Some point to parallel lineages, others to impossible timelines. One suggests a genetic memory older than our species itself. The stories stretch from Arizona caves to Soviet labs, from lost cities beneath sand and ice to signals that should never have arrived. Yet each time, the pattern is identical. A document appears, is verified, then vanishes under orders marked restricted, classified, or reabsorbed under jurisdiction. We traced 10 such cases, and what emerged is not a conspiracy. It's a protocol. Suppression is not random. It is coordinated. And when it comes to human origin, the boundaries of accepted knowledge are violently defended. This isn't theoretical. As recently as 2023, 4 of these files were briefly declassified under clerical error. One came from the Vatican archive. Another was auto-uploaded to a U.S. university server due to a corrupted folder. Each was live less than 24 hours. One whistleblower paid with his citizenship, another with her lab, and still the pattern held. 10 stories, 10 documents, 10 points of rupture in the story of who we are. They span a century. But they all suggest the same forbidding conclusion. Homo sapiens is not a closed file. 10 seemingly disconnected anomalies. Yet they all point to one truth. Every time someone gets too close to the origin, they vanish. And the first story is already classified. The Grand Canyon Cave Ledger. In April 1909, a front-page article appeared in the Arizona Gazette titled Explorations in Grand Canyon. It claimed that 2 Smithsonian-backed explorers had entered a series of man-made caves deep within the Grand Canyon. Inside, they found sarcophagi, hieroglyphs, and metallic artifacts. One object resembled a short-range glider. Another, a gold tablet covered in what the paper described as Oriental markings. At the time, the article was dismissed as local sensationalism, but in 1947, a field ledger surfaced from a retired geologist's estate, with catalog numbers, sketches, and notations that matched the article exactly. One entry read, Chamber 4, 37 recesses, each sealed, 8-foot effigies within. Then the ledger disappeared. The ledger was authenticated in 1950 by Dr. Emery Barris, an archivist then consulting with the U.S. Geological Survey. His signed analysis noted the binding style matched pre-1930 government field books, and the ink was a rare carbon compound discontinued after 1922. His notes mention 13 symbols not consistent with known Native American iconography, one of which reappears in a later Sumerian dig 8,000 miles away. A photo of the ledger's open pages was reportedly sent to the Smithsonian's Anthropology Division. That photo is no longer found in any known archive. In 1952, a fire swept through the Smithsonian's document storage facility in Suitland, Maryland. Officially ruled accidental, it destroyed more than 23,000 boxes of uncatalogued material, including the Barris file, the field ledger, and correspondence about the Arizona caves. When independent researchers attempted to locate the cave site in the early 1970s, they were stopped by restricted zone warnings enforced by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The Smithsonian has never acknowledged the 1909 expedition. No records remain of the two explorers. Dr. Barris died in 1961. His daughter later testified that her father had been deeply afraid in the final year of his life. "He never went hiking again," she said. "Not even in the woods near our home. He missed his grandson's birth. He stopped writing. His last notebook was filled only with one repeated phrase: 'Not Egyptian, not alone.'" 1 year later, the second file triggered a silent recall. The 1936 Baghdad skull photographs. In June 1936, a British Royal Air Force engineer stationed near Baghdad was surveying terrain for a proposed airstrip when he noticed something strange in the sediment wall of a shallow gorge. Embedded in the limestone, a partial skull, elongated, narrow, and with an unnatural sagittal crest, jutted from the rock face. He removed the fragment, cleaned it, and photographed it from 3 angles using a standard RAF issue Leica. His name was Sergeant Douglas Waincroft. His report was filed, and the photographs, labeled X Specimen 4A, were submitted to the British Museum in London via diplomatic pouch. For decades, no record of X Specimen 4A appeared in museum registries. But in 1998, a cache of uncatalogued negatives was discovered in a mislabeled drawer at the museum's anthropology wing during renovations. One was stamped 4A Baghdad. The negatives showed a cranium markedly unlike any known hominid. The eye orbits were oversized. The maxilla extended almost to the earline. A junior archivist uploaded a scanned version of the image to a university listserv. Within 12 hours, the post was deleted. His account was suspended. Later that year, an internal note circulated to museum staff stating, "All recovered material labeled X Specimen 4A is to be considered unverified and removed from public databases pending further review." The British Museum officially denies any record of the 1936 specimen. When contacted in 2005, a spokesperson claimed no such fossil was ever submitted or evaluated. Yet internal shipping manifests from 1936 list one diplomatic crate from Iraq, contents marked organic. When independent researchers tried to access the negative archive again in 2006, the drawer had been sealed and relabeled under a different classification: paleobotanical samples. The junior archivist who leaked the scan left the museum shortly after. In 2003, Douglas Waincroft's son, Harold, then living in Cardiff, attempted to auction what he claimed was the original skull fragment through an antiquities intermediary. Before the transfer was finalized, Harold was found unresponsive in his flat. No foul play was determined. The skull was never recovered. He missed his granddaughter's wedding. The trail crossed oceans and time. The Soviet Denisova Directive. In the winter of 1967, Soviet geologists surveying the Altai Mountains in Siberia reported the accidental unsealing of a limestone chamber deep within Denisova Cave. Inside, they found tools, preserved organic tissue, and a fragment of a finger bone, larger than Homo sapiens, yet not Neanderthal. The discovery was immediately redirected to a covert biogenetics team operating under the KGB's Directorate T. Within days, the chamber was resealed. A memo was issued to classify the find under a code name, Project Loki. In 1994, following a brief thaw in post-Soviet archives, A leaked internal directive titled Subject, Loci Sequestration Order 1408 surfaced in academic circles. It references DNA extracted from the tissue, which contained 2.7% non-human alleles, later described as incompatible with any existing hominid lineage. The directive included thermal scans of a buried subchamber and sketches of a tool inscribed with repeating geometric glyphs. One symbol matched a fragment documented in X specimen 4A. For 3 weeks, the memo circulated between 5 Russian academic institutes. Then it was seized under federal order. On April 3, 1983, the KGB raided the Institute of Molecular Genetics in Moscow. Lab equipment, research notes, and blood samples were confiscated. 5 researchers were reassigned. 3 others left science permanently. The name Project Loci was erased from institutional records. Attempts to trace the chain of command led to dead ends. The directive's original carbon copy was confirmed destroyed by 1987. No further mention of the non-human alleles exists in Russian literature after that date. In 1991, Dr. Ilya Voronov, one of the lead geneticists, attempted to defect to Sweden with microfilm copies of Project Loci research. His flight from Helsinki disappeared from radar 30 minutes after takeoff. Neither he nor the aircraft were recovered. He never met his newborn daughter. Project Loci was buried, but not for long. The 1987 Zombie and Tablet Incident. During routine excavation for the Kafue Gorge Upper Hydro Project in Zambia, engineers unearthed a copper tablet approximately 22 centimeters wide and marked with deeply engraved glyphs. The object was found encased in igneous strata dated to over 50,000 years before present, a full 40,000 years before the rise of Sumerian writing. Initial survey logs recorded the object as inscribed metal artifact, non-indigenous, unknown era. The artifact was photographed, logged, and delivered to UN archaeolinguistics consultant Dr. Amir al-Harazi, working under UNESCO's Heritage Program. Al-Harazi's translation notes were immediate and damning. According to internal memos later leaked by an anonymous ZESCO employee, he identified early-form Sumerian cuneiform, arranged in a syntax that mirrored devotional inscriptions, with direct references to sky throne, seeded blood, and upright ones who returned. One line included the sequence, Nam Lu Gal, an epithet for king, found in Mesopotamian city-states 40,000 years later. Photographic records of the tablet were stored on 35mm microfiche and sent to the National Archives of Zambia. A duplicate was transmitted to the British Museum via fax on May 11, 1987. Within 2 weeks, Dr. al-Harazi was expelled from Zambia on visa technicalities. The excavation was halted. All remaining artifacts were seized under a multinational antiquities injunction led by an unnamed oversight panel. 2 of the dig's local staff were reassigned to separate districts. When questioned later, one said, "We were told the artifact was too dangerous to identify." The microfiche reels disappeared from the National Archives in 1989 during an unexplained inventory reclassification. The British Museum denies receiving any fax or copy of the artifact. Al-Harazi returned to Jordan, but was denied further academic postings. He passed away in 1991. His nephew later recounted that the scholar had become reclusive, convinced that something older than kings had left the tablet behind. He died with an unfinished book manuscript in his lap. Its title, The Script Before the Flood. He missed his son's university graduation. 3 weeks later, a second translator vanished. The forbidden locust gene. In early 2004, a graduate researcher at Stanford University identified a genetic anomaly while sequencing archived brain tissue from a 1901 cadaver preserved in the university's own medical collection. The tissue came from a male subject once institutionalized for nonverbal cognition and temporal displacement behavior. What the researcher found was a gene cluster not present in any modern human genome, an unknown sequence lodged deep in a dormant region of the brain. She called it the forbidden locus, The segment bore partial resemblance to archaic hominids like Denisovans and Homo erectus, but included 3 markers that had no phylogenetic match. The sequence activated under electromagnetic induction, triggering temporary shifts in neural conductivity across the occipital lobe. When the data was submitted for preprint review under the title, Activation Loci in Non-Coding Cortical Regions, it circulated for less than 36 hours before being withdrawn without explanation. 3 days later, the researchers' lab access was revoked. Stanford's ethics board issued a private statement. Non-consensual genetic sequencing of post-mortem subjects in question. But the researcher had proper clearance. Within a week, the entire archive housing the 1901 specimen was sealed for reprocessing. Her internal lab notes included a handwritten comparison, side-by-side genome printouts, where she underlined the unknown base pair series and wrote simply, "Not human." One sample margin bore a number, 4A. It was the same alphanumeric used decades earlier in the Baghdad skull file. When she attempted to retrieve the sequencing hardware logs, they had been reset. A faculty mentor warned her not to pursue it. 2 months later, she was banned from NIH grants. A few skeptics proposed lab contamination or sample mislabeling. But the researchers' logs included full chain of custody and triple redundant cold storage. No mismatches were found in control specimens. The final email she sent before deleting her research folder read, "We're reading someone else's operating system." She moved to Canada the following year. Her fiancé later said she refused to discuss the project, even under pressure. She never saw her father again. The genome strain would return, encrypted. Operation Marduk. In March 2005, U.S. military engineers operating near the ruins of ancient Nippur in Iraq uncovered what they believed was a buried ziggurat chamber. Initial scans revealed stonework beneath layers of sediment. But when the chamber was breached, the discovery was not architectural, it was linguistic. Inside, on a half-buried limestone seal, was an image that shouldn't have existed. A double helix carved with mathematical precision, flanked by a bipedal figure and a radiating star map. The item was documented under the temporary name Artifact Theta 3, and images were transmitted to linguistics officers for analysis. One phrase, translated from cuneiform, read, "We were shaped by skyfire, our blood not of this clay." The artifact's surface dated to 3200 BCE. The Sumerians shouldn't have known DNA. The file was routed through Operation Marduk, a joint intelligence and archaeological assessment cell. Within 72 hours, all personnel attached to the dig site were reassigned. The coordinates were removed from Army systems. Then, the entire excavation site was destroyed in a detonation officially attributed to an insurgent IED. An enlisted drone operator, posted at a nearby Overwatch station, released a 47-second video clip days later. In it, the limestone seal is visible, briefly, before the chamber begins to collapse. The clip was pulled from the internet within hours. The soldier who leaked it was dishonorably discharged and later arrested for unrelated charges. When interviewed by independent media, he simply said, "That thing wasn't made here." The Pentagon issued a single response. No archaeological materials were recovered from the site in question. The team's cultural consultant, a local historian from Basra, disappeared the same month. His family claimed he had received threats. His apartment was found emptied, his academic files shredded. He never returned to his classroom. His students graduated without him. Then came the voice recording. The Vostok Lake audio file. In February 2012, a Russian research team at Lake Vostok in Antarctica lowered a tethered probe into the subglacial lake system hidden beneath over 2 miles of solid ice. The probe, fitted with thermal sensors and an acoustic hydrophone, was meant to detect extremophile microbial life. At 12,370 feet, the probe transmitted an audio stream that silenced the entire control room. The sounds were not biological in origin. They mimicked rhythm, pacing, and what appeared to be phonetic modulation. Over 6 minutes, the signal looped, unintelligible but patterned. Spectrograph analysis showed frequency spikes at intervals matching human vowel structures. It ended with a sharp tonal descent, followed by silence. The file was labeled Sequence Delta V and stored on an encrypted state server. The team was instructed not to speak of it publicly. 4 days later, all outbound data traffic from Vostok Station was terminated under orders citing weather interference. But a technician had already saved the audio to a personal drive. In June 2012, the file was posted anonymously to a Bulgarian cryptography forum. It remained online for 3 hours. Then it was gone. Experts who reviewed the waveform before deletion noted an anomaly. The modulation pattern closely resembled a 1998 underwater audio file from the Gulf of Aden, the same region where, years later, a cranium matching X specimen 4A would be found. Russian authorities issued no statement, but by March, the Vostok Station team had been rotated out and replaced entirely. For 9 days, the facility went offline. Satellite imagery showed no activity during that period. Later that year, a foreign press outlet received an unmarked package containing a thermal map of the lake bed. The contours showed 3 raised structures, equidistant, aligned on a fixed azimuth, each with central voids. When questioned by reporters, the Russian Ministry of Natural Resources responded, "No anomalies have been recorded at Lake Vostok. All operations remain standard." One of the researchers, interviewed anonymously in 2014, said only this: "It was a voice, but it wasn't calling us. It was remembering." He left science the following winter. His wife said he stopped speaking entirely, but the echo appeared in a 1998 file, Return of X Specimen 4A. In July 2021, a deep-sea surveillance drone operated by a NATO expedition detected anomalous thermal activity at a depth of 19,800 feet in the Gulf of Aden. The drone, named Loris 7, was mapping tectonic ridges when it passed over a vent structure not listed in any known geophysical registry. It paused for 6 minutes, then sent an alert. The camera had captured skeletal remains, embedded in mineral shell but exposed. A single cranium, distorted, non-human, yet unmistakably similar to a previous file. Baghdad, 1936. When analyzed by onboard AI, the cranium received a 97.6% visual match to the image labeled X Specimen 4A. Same sagittal crest, same occipital expansion, same estimated size. But this skull wasn't fossilized. It was fresh. Thermal readings showed residual heat. The visual data and sonar mapping were sent to command servers. Within hours, the feed was marked corrupted. The drone reported depth instability and was ordered to return. On ascent, Loris 7 malfunctioned. Navigation failed. It descended uncontrolled and was lost. A backup copy of the feed was archived locally on a technician's private cloud. Before it could be shared, he received a cease order from NATO's Strategic Maritime Division. The official reason: unsecured transmission of incomplete telemetry data. He was reassigned within the month. The incident file, numbered 4A21, was scrubbed from expedition logs. Public-facing summaries of the dive refer only to undersea gas measurements, but one leaked internal memo references the sonar cross-section as biogenic echo, non-identified classification. And one line, redacted in every version but one, reads, "Return confirmed, sequence loop present." The sequence, looping phonetics, recorded in Antarctica nearly a decade prior, was embedded in the sonar frequency response. It had returned, not repeated, recognized. The cranium was never recovered. The vent collapsed days later in a tectonic shift. The technician who flagged the ID match was later hospitalized under a non-disclosure wellness clause. He never touched a screen again. Same cranium, same ID tag. The pattern is no longer terrestrial. The Moonprint Memo. In 1976, a classified post-mission memo from NASA's Apollo program, circulated briefly among Level 4 mission analysts. The memo referred to a redacted segment of the Apollo 17 EVA logs. Specifically, a field note from Commander Eugene Cernan describing irregular residue on basalt surface, organic characteristics, bipedal trace. The file was stamped bio-e-trace. For decades, the segment was dismissed as misinterpreted geologic readings. But in early 2023, a declassified memo surfaced under the Freedom of Information Act. Its metadata matched the original Apollo transmission block, including timestamps from the Taurus Littrow Valley during the mission's final moonwalk. The leaked file described a 12-meter path of partially melted regolith, with pressure points aligned in alternating bilateral intervals. Not impact, not machinery, not rover. The pressure matched bipedal gait, but the stride exceeded human length by 43 centimeters. The organic residue was sampled and returned to Earth. It was logged, frozen, and forgotten. Until 2023, analysis of the residue using spectral sequencing unavailable in the 1970s revealed partial RNA strands, degraded but real. Two markers matched sequences previously dismissed in a 2004 Stanford paper. The forbidden locus. Then came the cross-reference tag. The sample container had been relabeled at some point between 1981 and 1990. Its new ID prefix began with 4A, the same string assigned to the Baghdad skull, the same file number in the deep-sea drone log, the same code that had reappeared again and again under different agencies, on different continents, for nearly a century. In 2002, Cernan gave a private interview to a closed academic panel. Off record, he stated, "We weren't the first up there, not by a long shot." Months later, he suffered sudden onset aphasia and withdrew from public life. When asked if he had any regrets, he said only, "The footprints were not ours. NASA has never acknowledged the memo." Official EVA logs remain redacted under national security statute. The container was moved from JPL to an undisclosed location in 2024. Same sequence, same identifier, same silence. The final story connects everything. The pre-Earth signal. In 1997, the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico registered a weak but structured signal during a routine calibration sweep of deep space background radiation. The transmission repeated over 6 minutes and contained a binary sequence that partially matched the chemical encoding of human DNA, but inverted. The pattern should have been meaningless, but in 2031, using a non-local modeling protocol developed for quantum encryption, physicist Dr. Talia Mendes reconstructed the signal through simulated resonance. What she found was impossible. The binary contained a compressed gene map, not random, not extraterrestrial, familiar. It matched the forbidden locus, the same unidentified strand discovered in Stanford's cadaver sequencing 3 decades earlier. And the signal didn't come from space. It came from Earth, or more accurately, from a point in space Earth would occupy, 20 years before the transmission was even received. A signal sent backward in time, locked in a structure only future computation could decode. When Dr. Mendes submitted her findings to the Interstellar Signal Database, her access was suspended. Her publication queue was deleted. A day later, the ISD servers went into emergency maintenance. Her credentials were revoked. An archived copy of her paper appeared briefly on a .onion mirror titled, "We Were Not First." It was deleted within 72 hours. Only one sentence remains, screenshotted before the purge. The signal is a primer, not for contact, but for remembering. Official response from the National Science Foundation stated that no verifiable pre-Earthbound signal consistent with current astrophysical models has been received at Arecibo. But internal observatory logs from 1997 list the entry as Bio-Echo PR1. The same prefix used in the Apollo 17 file, the same RNA trace, the same recursion. Every file leads here. Every signal ends with us, or begins. If this file is real, time itself is lying. If a signal can arrive before it is sent, if a footprint appears where no one walked, if a human gene exists before a human is born, then we are not witnessing the past. We are intercepting a memory. But whose? Every file we've traced, every skull, artifact, frequency, and signature points to one conclusion left unspoken in every textbook. We were not the beginning. We were the result. The idea is older than science and too dangerous for science to name. What if consciousness didn't emerge? It rebooted. What if the human form is not designed, but remembered? The consequences are not philosophical. They're personal, because if memory precedes biology, and biology can transmit through time, then your thoughts are not entirely your own. One could argue none of this is real, that skulls are mismeasured, signals misread, and coincidences inevitable. But 10 deleted files say otherwise. And if even one is true, then someone built the version of you that exists right now. 10 stories, 10 points of failure in the official record, 10 fingerprints pressed through time, pressing back. So now what do? Do we seal this archive again? Or do we read it? Because there are only two kinds of people now. Those who believe the story we were told, and those who see the gaps. Archive it or burn it.